We're here for When Helping Hurts. It's about missions. And again, if you just feel free to use the bathrooms, get up and stretch, that sort of thing. We're real casual. We're mission people, right? So we're about flexibility. The workshop today is based on two books, primarily. When Helping Hurts, How to Alleviate Poverty Without Hurting the Poor and Yourself by Steve Corbett and Brian Fickert. And Toxic Charity, How Churches and Charities Hurt Those They Help and How to Reverse It by Robert D. Lupton. So I have those two books here as well. Please come on in. And how many of you have read When Helping Hurts? Has anybody read that book or any of the series? Awesome. Okay. Has anybody read Toxic Charity? A few people. And there's also, clicker happy. Come on in. When Helping Hurts, there's a small group experience, and there's short-term missions. There's a leader's guide and a video series that goes with this. I have not been able to check these out yet, but if you want to look through these at your convenience afterwards, you're welcome to. And eventually, if I get to them, you can email me and ask me how they are. But I didn't get to them before this series. So, I'd like to go around and do some introductions, and I'll try not to walk in front of you too much. I'd like you to say your name, where you're from, and I want you to tell me whether or not you would prefer at Christmas time a real or fake tree, and I'll let you know why later. So do you mind starting here? No problem. All right. If you can speak pretty loudly, I am hard of hearing, so please do speak loudly.
My name is Terry Clear. I'm from Newburgh. I actually do both. I have a real tree in one room.
I didn't bank on that.
Artificial tree in another room.
Awesome.
I'm Kevin St. Martin. I'm from Pennsdale, which is close to Williamsport. So up from there. Is neither an option?
Yeah, if that's your answer, yeah. All right. Both and neither, and right off the bat. See, you never know until you ask.
Hi, Janet Fisher-Byers. I'm from Stewartstown. This is York District, and real.
She's telling the truth.
Real. See, and some people are very stern about this answer.
It's Christmas.
Real.
If you can find a space in our house without decorations, then you're feeling good.
Yes.
So is it like Griswold real? Like huge, okay.
My name is Pat Byers. We're both from Stewartstown, and I'm with her.
Deanna Johnson, Airville, Salem, York District. Last year we didn't have a tree because we had 2 dogs that knocked them over.
Dogs. Dog is the answer. No tree, dog.
Debbie Selfridge, Oceana Church near Clearfield. I prefer real, but now that I'm retired, none. Because I go to the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Joyce Stubbs, Susquehanna Conference, artificial.
Lou Stubbs, Mount Zion Luciano Charge, Altoona District. Whatever makes a wife happy.
What was it last year?
Artificial.
Artificial.
Laura Kyler with the Tri-County Parish in the Williamsport District. I prefer the real, but reality necessitates artificial. Kathleen Danley from Howard, or Curtin in
Come on in.
the State College District and artificial.
Jane Dodson, Miles Mountaintop Christ Church in Lewisburg District, and we have a real.
Before you go, we're doing our name, where you're from, and whether or not you prefer a real Christmas tree or a fake Christmas tree. So all of these people will go, and then you go last.
I'm Marcia Banks. I'm from the New Journey Church in Harrisburg.
Oh, awesome.
I'm in the Harrisburg district. And I'm going to go visit the tree. So I don't have a tree.
Oh, that's a new answer. Awesome, yeah.
I'm Rachel Wong. I'm from Middlesex UMC in Harrisburg District. And
So what was it last year?
Last
Year to year.
I was 8 months pregnant, so we didn't have a tree. But, yeah.
So we'll see what the baby chooses.
Yeah.
I'm Betty Baker, Tarleton Church, Francisburg District, and we have a artificial tree because of the cat.
Dolly Toretto, Skinner's Eddy Church in the Scranton Wilkes-Barre district. And I go visit the real tree.
In the city.
My daughter gets a real tree.
Oh, okay.
I put one.
Gotcha.
Carl Herman, the South Franklin Charge in the York District, and my wife and I both like artificial. If I touch a real tree, I can get a rash. Christmas tree.
Barb Doan, Trinity Charge, Williamsport District, actually north of Williamsport. And we prefer real, and we'll actually get them real that we can then plant them out.
Oh, ooh,
But
cool.
recently, we've had to do, because of circumstances, have had to have an artificial, but we prefer the real.
Mary Ann Meyer, Gibson Charge, South Gibson United Methodist Church, Scranton Wilkes-Barre District, and we're all about the real deal. But my husband's starting to give resistance. So I have to
The
firmly stand my
resistance.
ground.
Come on in. There's some seats over here, some over here.
Yes.
So we're giving name, where you're from, and if you prefer a real or a fake tree. You're not up yet, so go ahead and have a seat. You're almost up.
I'm Sarah Mardua. I'm from the Lewisburg Church. I go to Denton United Methodist Church, and honestly, I have an artificial tree because I have asthma, but I would prefer to have a tree. That's just my personal, because I don't really like to decorate that much. So,
Me?
Sure.
I'm not sure what my name is. I just been all over.
You kind of figure it out. Somebody knows.
Yeah, Joanne Griglock, from West Pittston, Pennsylvania, First United Methodist Church. And my Christmas tree is,
If you like a real or a fake, or some other answer. Some people have had letter C. Fill in the blank.
fake with only lights on it, except for the angel, because that's how my husband liked it.
Cool. See, I like these answers. I didn't bank on some of these. Did we get everyone? All right. So I am Michelle Schwartzman, and I'm the director of United Methodist Volunteers in Mission for the conference. And I currently live in Lemoyne, Pennsylvania, which is across the river from Harrisburg, and in the Harrisburg district. And I'd like to say that I've lived in all of the districts, if you give me one. I am an avid church camper, and I've spent a lot of time at Wesley Forest, which I believe is in the Lewisburg district. So if you give me that one, I've lived in all 7 districts. So I grew up in Heiner, Pennsylvania, which is the middle of nowhere, which is now the State College District. I went to Lycoming College, which is the Williamsport district, and lived there after we were married, and lived in Scranton district I went to Marywood University, also lived there 2 different times married, lived in the York district, and lived in the Altoona district right before my husband's a pastor, so he was appointed in Altoona right before we moved to Harrisburg. So my husband said I should get some kind of award. So I'm waiting for that to come in the mail, because I only win weird awards like that. So I currently live in the Harrisburg district, and I really enjoy it. Let's see, where do I want to go with this? The United Methodist Volunteers with Mission, if you're unfamiliar with what I do now, it is now currently a part-time position. So we're trying to squeeze that all into 20 hours. I train volunteers and leaders of mission trips. And so you have a nice handout. I currently have 7 in all districts. So if you want one that's close by or one that fits your schedule, hopefully you can find one, or you can pass that on to your churches. I celebrate the missions that are happening in the churches. That's a challenge that I've taken upon is there's so much mission happening in our churches that we really want to celebrate what's happening, because there's a lot that one church doesn't know that the other church is doing. I am learning every time I talk to somebody in the churches what is happening. And so I'm trying to get it out there and just say, hey, look what this church is doing. It's really cool, so that we can learn from each other what types of things each of the churches are doing. And I get to lead some trips internationally and nationally. Okay, the big answer. I was dead set on a real tree my entire life. Like, I was the real tree answer. And then one day, I said, I can't believe I'm saying this to my husband. I think we should get a fake tree. Because we were leaving the day after Christmas to go to India. And I couldn't believe, like, how are we going to take down the tree, blah, blah, blah. So ever since then, we've had a fake, and it's super ugly. It is really, really ugly. We have this really ugly fake tree, but it's our beautiful, amazing tree. So it's ugly and beautiful at the same time because it's our Christmas tree. So we'll come back to that. Whoops. I didn't know that would do that. I didn't know that button would do that. I just want to make sure. Oh, no, we won't get back to that. I'm going to talk about that right now. The reason that I asked that question is because that's about our culture. And that goes back to our family. That goes back to probably something that you did as a child. And that, some people have very strong feelings. Like, when you would have asked me that question a long time ago, I was very fervent in my answer. It was a real tree. Now I joke about it because I can't really believe that I changed my mind. But life changes. And, you kind of become a little more flexible with those sorts of things. I got to stop walking in front of that for several reasons. So when you start thinking about the different things in your culture, it's not just international. And I wanted to point that out because I didn't want you to think, oh, well, I'm never going to go on an international trip. And so I didn't want you to think, oh, I'm never going to go on an international trip. This doesn't pertain to me. I'm never going to lead an international trip. This doesn't pertain to me. Because it does pertain to us. It pertains to everybody. Because I grew up in a what I would consider non-diverse area. Heiner, Pennsylvania is a teeny tiny town in Pennsylvania where everybody is exactly the same. But when I started thinking about it, when I was doing this, my best friend was from a Catholic family. I was Protestant. There were 8 children in her family. There were 3 in ours. And then I started thinking about, she made Easter bread, and I did this, and there were cultural differences. Then, for those of you who might know me and my husband is from the Bronx, and I'm from Heiner, Pennsylvania. So we spent literally the first several years of our relationship together, discovering those funny things about each other and our culture. And so his mother brought out a plate of white stuff and said, do you want some? And I was like, I don't know what that is. And my mother brought out a plate of white stuff and said, do you want some? And it had a little brown in it. And he didn't know what it was. It was fresh mozzarella, or mozzarella, that his mom brought out. And it was a plate of potato candy that my mom brought out. What the heck are these things? We didn't know. There was a time of me telling him about floating down the river on the west branch of the Susquehanna. And I would tell him that I could swim across the river. And all he could think about was the Hudson River. And how awesome I was that I could swim across the Hudson River, which is huge. And then he also thought, oh, wow, that's really polluted and gross. And I told him about we would get an inner tube and float down on an inner tube. Well, what's an inner tube? Well, like a truck tire. And you take out the inside and you float down on that. And all he could think of was a truck tire. And he couldn't figure out what that was. And so there were all of these things that we had to discover because we were basically from different cultures and different things. And I went to New York City and I saw the Christmas tree and I walked with a whole bunch of people like this and I held his hand because I'd never been around so many people. And I never got to ride in a taxi, and his dad is a bus driver in New York, so I got to ride a New York City bus. That was really cool. Public transportation, go figure. When we first met, he said, "Do you have a driver's license?" We met as freshmen in college. I laughed in his face. I had been driving for 3 years. I'm from Pennsylvania. Of course I have a driver's license. But to him, it was pretty rare that he had a driver's license because he was from the Bronx. His mom still doesn't have a driver's license. His brother still doesn't have a driver's license. So you don't have to be from a different country to have different cultures, to be different, and to learn about different nuances of the way you are. So that's why I asked that question now. The other one that I'm just going to say because it's funny. When I started writing this down, you could go forever. We eat spaghetti out of a jar, spaghetti sauce, and they eat gravy. Gravy is what you put on mashed potatoes. So, I mean, it just like blows your mind, all the different things. We talk about mission and outreach programs are built on the best intention. What happens when those intentions have negative long-term impacts? This is what we're talking about today. When I read these stories, they're full of horror stories. I mean, for me, somebody who does mission, this was really sad for me to embrace. So I want to start out talking about what is poverty. So especially those who haven't read When Helping Hurts, if you can participate mainly because you kind of know the answers if you have read it. But if I can have somebody be the scribe, does somebody want to write on the white sheet for me? We're just going to make a list of words. So think of different words. What comes to your mind when you think of poverty? So go ahead and shout it out.
I said hunger. Unemployment.
Poor.
Hopelessness.
Lack of opportunity.
Maybe,
Homeless.
Ooh, clicker happy.
they may be unemployed, but they might also be employed but below minimum wage.
Low income.
Self-esteem. That's what I'm thinking in terms of fear or being publicly shamed because they are needy.
So what was that first word?
It's
Shame.
their self-image because of being labeled poor,
Mm-hmm.
not having enough. Yes.
Poor healthcare.
The need to focus on survival first.
Awesome.
trying to go for the big dream, so they gamble.
All right, I'm going to stop you there. Thank you. Thanks. So after World War II, Allies established the World Bank so that they could finance the rebuilding of war-torn Europe. And it worked. Like, they actually built Europe back up. And so they tried this on poverty-stricken countries like India, and it didn't work. And so after decades of doing this, they decided, we're going to ask these countries why this isn't working. We're going to ask them, what is poverty? And so there was research happening. And so they asked 60,000 poor people from 60 low-income countries. And it's published in a book called Voices of the Poor. And I'm going to read a few snippets from that. And so take notice of some of the words that are used that they describe what poverty is. So from Moldova, for a poor person, everything is terrible. Illness, humiliation, shame. We are cripples. We are afraid of everything. We depend on everyone. No one needs us. We are like garbage that everyone wants to get rid of. Guinea-Bissau. When I don't have any food to bring to my family, I borrow mainly from neighbors and friends. I feel ashamed standing before my children when I have nothing to help feed the family. I am not well when I'm unemployed. It is terrible. From Latvia. During the past 2 years, During the past 2 years, we have not celebrated any holidays with others. We cannot afford to invite anyone to our house, and we feel uncomfortable for visiting others without bringing a present. The lack of contact leaves one depressed, creates a constant feeling of unhappiness and a sense of low self-esteem. From Uganda, when one is poor, she has no say in public. She feels inferior. She has no food, so there is famine in her house, no clothing, no progress in her family. From Cameroon, the poor have a feeling of powerlessness and an inability to make themselves heard. From Senegal, your hunger is never satisfied. Your thirst is never quenched. You can never sleep until you are no longer tired. Come on in. Vietnam. If you are hungry, you will always be hungry. If you are poor, you will always be poor. Ecuador. What determines poverty or well-being? The indigenous people's destiny is to be poor. So what you see here is a mismatch of perception of poverty. What they found when they asked people in the U.S., and I think we kind of crossed the line some. We didn't completely do it. When they did the research, people in the U.S. mainly answered lack of food, lack of money, very conditional answers. We started pulling up things like shame, and that's what people experiencing poverty actually feel and express about their poverty. And so psychological and social terms are what are actually felt and expressed when they're asked, what is poverty? So the consequences are devastating because it's not just lack of food, lack of money, not having a home. It's the psychological effects. It's the being shamed, the dignity. So another key point to some of the ways that helping has hurt in the past, because I want to point out some of the ways that the books talk about the ways that mission has hurt, ways that we see now that mission and service has actually hurt others. And paternalism is one of those ways. Paternalism is taking away freedoms of those who are subordinate to others. You think about this when you're raising children and you want them to do a task, but it's hard for you to allow them to do it because you can do it better. You want them to fold the clothes, but you can do it neater. You want them to put the dishes in the dishwasher, but you can do it the right way. So this happens in mission as well. Do not do things for people that they can do for themselves. So it's doing for people instead of with people. And there's all sorts of ways that missions experiences paternalism. So that's one of the keys that we want to be careful of. When reading these books, this was one of the main notes of research of some of the things that we say mission does, but on the contrary, it does not do. So I want to go down through and talk about each one briefly, but something I want to put out there first is my disclaimer. Not all mission is bad. Not all your helping has been bad. But we're not going to be able to move forward unless we put our guard down. When I was reading some of these, I was finding myself saying, but, what about, but that time, we find our defenses coming up. And so I would ask to try to put your defenses down a little bit. We're all mission people, and so I think that our defenses will tend to go up when we hear some of the facts. And so if you can try to put them down in an essence of learning and figuring out how we can move forward and know that people have now done the research and how we can move forward. And we'll get to that point like, okay, well, these are the things that we found and they're not so good. What's next? What do we do? So and I think I touched on this before. Like I said, this is pretty much my life's work. So when I was reading this, I was like, oh, great. Yay. So my guard also went up. So most mission trips and service projects do not empower those being served. Oh, okay. They do weaken those being served. So this is the paternalism that I just mentioned. So this is years and years of colonial missions happening, coming in and saying, we're better than you. This is the right way to do things. I'm going to do this for you. It's years and years of, on the receiving end, okay, well, you have something that I am going to benefit from. I am going to kind of have to deal with your overbearing power and deal with that so that I can get some help. So we have to remember it's not the for, but doing mission with others. Mission trips and service projects do not engender healthy cross-cultural relationships. They do foster dishonest relationships. Again, this is about abuse of power. When you come in as somebody having all the money and coming in and saying, we're going to do it our way, that doesn't equate to an equal relationship. And so oftentimes the relationship is not equal. And so that's where the cross-cultural relationships are not free to be equal. The receiving end isn't free to be open to say, no, you know what, that's not really helpful. That's not really what would be needed. They're not on equal ground. Mission trips and service projects do not improve the quality of life and do erode recipients' work ethics. Oftentimes, getting things for free deteriorates that. That was something that was hard for me to swallow because I always thought, like, if I have something, why can't I just give it to somebody for free? But reading these books, I really understood about dignity and how that does deteriorate that. We'll talk more about that later when we read a story about Christmas. But when I was at the Mission Academy in April, there was a woman there who serves in Haiti, and they have kind of like a mission hub, and the children in Haiti were coming and making bracelets, and as the teams were coming in week after week after week, the kids were allowed to sell bracelets to the team, and the team would flock there. Oh, $5 a bracelet, you know, so the team loved it, the team loved the kids, it sounded great. Well, the person in charge noticed that the kids were there during school and kind of were there all the time now. And so she asked the kids, what's happening? Well, our dad said that we can come here now all the time because I make more than him. So we were deteriorating the work ethic because it's easier for my kid to make bracelets and make more than me. So we really have to be careful in what we're doing and how we're wrecking the economy and wrecking a work ethic and being cognizant of what's happening around us. You know, we think, oh, you know, we're helping. This is when helping is hurting. We deepen dependency because of the cycles. One of the things that is often said about mission that research has found is that there's no long-term change for participants, and it doesn't significantly increase long-term mission work. How many of you know somebody who has gone on short-term mission that has actually gone into long-term mission work? Now, if you don't know this, short-term mission is defined from anywhere from 1 week to 2 years. So I lived in India for 6 months. That's a short-term mission trip. So has anybody actually known somebody that has gone on a short-term mission trip that then has dedicated their life to long-term mission work? I've known one person that has done that. So that's what we're saying, you know, like one of the things that has been said about mission is, oh, well, it spurs people into long-term mission. It doesn't. It says that it's life-changing. People come home from short-term mission trips and we're on a buzz, but it doesn't significantly change a lifestyle. And so that's what this research is finding, is that, and go ahead.
Well, to the contrary, I've been going to Africa for the last 4 years, and I built a home there. So it has impacted me in a way in which I want to eventually retire and go into missions on a long-term basis. So I guess it really depends on the passion or the ability to think that you can implement the change. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about that transition in my life.
I'm excited about that too. So now we can say we knew too. I know too. Right. And that's that it doesn't not happen. But it doesn't happen in like droves. No. I wish it did. Oh my gosh, I gotta talk faster. Okay. So, this is talking about if we believe what the primary cause of poverty is compared to how we will react. So, if you believe that the primary cause of poverty is the lack of knowledge, you'll educate the poor. If you believe it's the oppression of power, you'll work for social justice. If you believe it's the personal sins of the poor, you'll evangelize and disciple the poor. A lack of material resources, you'll give material resources. And sometimes, like, I tend to think like it's not necessarily fall into one of these categories. I want to get back to the cross-cultural engagement that we talked about when we introduced ourselves. What will you encounter? When I was thinking about this, and this is like a wonky, weird thing to put up, but when I was thinking about mission and thinking about, okay, well, how do we put all of these things together? How do we cross over? How do we interact when we go on a mission trip? What are the ways that we can better our ways? And so I was thinking about when we're at home, we're like a nice, tight, rolled up umbrella. All of our little swirls are in a line, and we can be straight and narrow exactly how we like them. If you're somebody that likes your peanut butter and jelly with the crust cut off and the fancy peanut butter with the honey in it and strawberry jelly, but not jelly, jam, and you're somebody that likes to wear shorts, or maybe capris, no dresses, no thanks, and tank tops because it's hot out in the summer, and you're somebody that needs air conditioning because it's hot out in the summer, and you like everything kind of in its place, and you like it done the way you like it done because, that's the way you are, and you're a little bit OCD and very type A personality. That's fine, and it's okay. But when you're on a mission trip, you kind of need to open up a little bit. This isn't my umbrella. And have some room for some other things. And you have to be free to allow, maybe you're not going to get the peanut butter you like. So when I was thinking about this, the first time I went to India was in 2008. And, hopefully if you go on a mission trip, you go to meetings ahead of time to find out what it's going to be like, especially if it's an international trip. And so we were told what the food's going to be like, what the culture's going to be like. The women should wear dresses, and your shoulders should be covered, and all of these things. And one of the things about being on a mission trip and talking about how to respect another culture and to respect where you're going and to respect your host is just that, is the respect. And not to be like, well, I'm a feminist and I'm going to wear shorts because that's who I am. No, you are going to respect what that they are asking of you because they're your host. And that's that paternalism that we were talking about. And that's the abuse of power that we're talking about. It's not always about us knowing better and about us knowing, I'm going to go and fix you. It's about working with the teams and the places that you're going to. It's about finding out about the ministry that's happening there and being a part of that. And so opening that up. One of the things that I experienced in India was the culture about time. And when Helping Hurts talks about this concept of time, there's monochronic, and it's in When Helping Hurts, but it's also cited from a different source. The US is way over on one side, when all these so India's way over here on the concept of time. And so monochronic is more task-oriented. Time is money. We need to get things done. What's next? when do I do this? What is, So polychronic, relationship-oriented. There's always more time. There's a deeper sense of community here. So what I experienced in India was the bus will come at 2. Okay, the team went down. 1:45, the bus wasn't there. The bus was late. People were getting cranky. What's the big deal? Then, the bus will come at 5. So everybody went down at 4:45. Everybody was getting cranky. The bus was late. So instead of people finding things to do and seeing that there's some children that they could play with and using that time, and like, I need to get to the next activity because that's who we are. So it's about understanding who we are. It's not necessarily about being right or wrong, but it's kind of about embracing who we are and embracing that clash. So I was able to understand, okay, this is who we are, and this is where I am. And so I've been there several times and I've lived there. So now it's just like, okay, I'll just kind of wait for the fun horn to go off and I'm ready, but I can go hang out with some of the kids. So it's not about being right or wrong, but it is about being educated about where you're going to be and about cultures and those sorts of things. There's also a sense of self, and I couldn't find the nice little clip art for that, but I can explain it, 154. And the US, of course, is way over on the one side, and actually China is moved over here, and Mexico is kind of here. But other than that, Africa is right here. So it's a concept of self, and individualism is down here. Be all that you can be, and individualistic cultures, this is like spiritual gifts. It's all about, what are you called to be? That makes sense. We've heard that before. And collectivist cultures. It minimizes individual identity, and it talks about loyalty and self-sacrifice to your tribe or to your employer, to your company, to the collective culture. So that makes a little more sense for that.
Michelle? On that last slide, is that showing then that Japan has found a balance between the two?
It looks like that it is. It falls in between. I don't think it said a whole lot about it.
Okay.
I haven't been to Japan, so I didn't really, didn't speak to me. And I don't think they mentioned it. It is interesting that they're right in the middle, and they're right in the middle for both. Well, I guess Japan is slightly on the collective side.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the charity industry is booming. And even it's booming, but it also is going unchecked until recently when all of these studies are starting to pop up. Books like these are starting to pop up. If you go on Facebook around your birthday, they want you to do a fundraiser. Your kids are coming home from school, do a jump-a-thon, do this, do that. School has service days. Oh, wait. I think I skipped something. I don't want to skip it. I'm sorry, what? I didn't skip anything. There was a story that I skipped, if I skipped it, but I don't want to skip. Well, maybe this is it right now. I'll tell you it right now. This urban Christmas story. Oh yeah, I was supposed to tell you about it right here. But that's okay. I'll tell you it right now. So the author of Toxic Charity actually moved into the neighborhood that he was ministering to. Oftentimes, it's called community development, where you move into the neighborhood that you're ministering to and get to know the people there. And so this is what he talks about and what he finds out about when he does this, when they used to bring gifts into this poor neighborhood. So now he's seeing it from the other side. And I thought it best just to read it because it's pretty short. That's why Christmas Eve of '81, I celebrated the season as a newcomer to this urban neighborhood, sipping coffee with one of my new neighbors. Bare floors were swept clean and clutter was picked up. The smell of pine sol hung in the air. Front windows reflected the light from 2 plastic candles, a small artificial tree on a corner table blinked with a single strand of colored lights. The children, antsy with anticipation, paced from window to window, waiting for Santa's helpers to arrive. When the knock finally came on the door, their mom greeted the visitors, a well-dressed family with young children, and invited them to step inside. A nervous smile concealed their embarrassment as she graciously accepted armfuls of neatly wrapped gifts. In the commotion, no one noticed that the children's father had quietly slipped out of the room. No one but their mom. Not until the guests were gone and the children had torn through the wrappings to the treasures inside did one of the little ones ask where their father was. No one questioned their mother's response that he had gone to the store. But after organizing these kind of Christmas charity events for years, I was witnessing a side I had never noticed before, how a father was emasculated in his own home in front of his wife and children for not being able to provide presents for his family, how a wife was forced to shield her children from their father's embarrassment, how children get the message that the good stuff comes from rich people out there and it is free. Only after becoming a neighbor was I able to see what we had done. Christmas Eve in that living room, I became painfully aware that not all charity is good charity. Even the most kind-hearted, rightly motivated giving, as innocent as giving Christmas toys to needy children, can exact an unintended toll on a parent's dignity. Inadvertently, I had done just that. Not just this time, but many times. This kind of charity has to stop, I vowed. The cost was just too great, the emotional pain too severe. There had to be a better way. So much of our holiday season, from Thanksgiving till Christmas, is consumed with giving. Turkeys distributed by the score, free feasts in the church fellowship hall, heaping food baskets for seniors, Santa parties for kids. Giving is supposed to be a joyous process, but throughout our various giving activities, I had overlooked the darker side. Emotional price tags were attached to each of these charitable events. I thought, too, about our church clothes closet and food pantry. Did those have the same issues at play? That was tough to read. I just want to check my notes a second. After this, they did close their clothes closet and opened a store where the community members could work and either earn things from the store or buy, obviously be able to buy things from the store. And then at Christmas time, they added a section where they added toys and gifts and things. And so if people could buy them at a very low cost, or they could come and work smaller shifts and purchase the things there. So you can kind of brainstorm on some of the toxic charity that maybe you're involved in personally through church, through an organization. So as I was saying, the charity industry is on the rise, and it's not being checked until pretty recently when these books are starting to pop up. And the urban Christmas story is a good example. Africa is another prime example that when I was reading this, I was like, wow, I did not think about this. Dead Aid is a book by Dambisa Moyo. And the quote is, "Why, asked Moyo, do the majority of countries of her continent flounder in seemingly never-ending cycle of corruption, disease, poverty, and aid dependency, despite the fact that sub-Saharan countries have received more than $300 billion in development assistance since 1970. So this person is asking that question, and I've never thought about that. So much aid is coming in, and yet it's still in devastation. She is quoting political instability and corruption and says, Zaire's president Mobutu Sese Seko is estimated to have personally skimmed $5 billion, which is the amount equivalent to the entire internal debt of his country, and it discourages free enterprise. So the African mosquito netting manufacturer was put out of businesses by well-meaning charities that handed out millions of free nets. This one made me question and want to do some research. That one hit home. Yeah, that one I was like, eesh, and I didn't have time to do more research on that, but I want to. So Moyo is asking why, and Toxic Charity is asking why. The heart is why. Because the reason that we're all here, because our heart is moved to help each other. We all are here because mission moves us, because people and the need of others moves us, that compassion, that want to act. The very reason why these things move us, the very reason that people are hurting, the very reason that we hear that the possibility of our helping is hurting, all of that is the reason why. So what is next? There's something that we always say at our house is, when you know something, you can't unknow it. So that is what I kept thinking of when I was reading these things. Like, okay, like my defenses wanted to go up, and I wanted to be like, but, yes, people were helped, and in this case, people were helped, and in this case, but there were also the cases where people were not helped, and there were the cases that dignity was shattered, and there were cases where there was shame, and there were cases where the power was used, and there were cases where people come in and say, well, this is what I'm going to do, and this is, my mission to you, and I'm going to build this for you. Well, we don't need that. Well, this is what I'm going to do. People actually do that. If you read these books, there's some crazy stories about mission trips. And I hope that you were not a part of any of those, because they're sad. They're sad to be a part of that. So when you know something, you can't unknow it. But you do know, you love. You also know that actions have caused hurt, but you know that you can educate yourselves. You can educate those around you, your church, your teams, and we can revamp what we do. We just got to remember, we got to do it a little differently. I told the IT people that I would do this to the camera when I talked about change. You got to be okay with change. You got to be okay with change. And then this also has to be okay with change. You got to remember that helping hurts. So that sometimes when you kind of get an idea, you have to remember not to fall into just doing it the way that you've always done it. You have to start asking questions. Okay, am I doing this for someone? Am I being invited in? Is somebody propelling this that is actually from the place? Like, is this their idea? Am I telling them what needs to be done? In community development, that's huge. Like, is this their idea or is this my idea? Am I telling you this? So going back to those old habits and kind of questioning and going through a new process. So that's what we're going to talk about now. In the books, there were 3 things, and this is in both books, tried and true. There are 3 stops in the continuum, and this is from Toxic Charity. Roger Sandberg is mentioned. There's relief, rehabilitation, and development. And Rehabilitation is the relief work that occurs immediately following an emergency, including not only life-saving interventions, but also alleviation of suffering. So this is your emergency response training. Is anybody here in ERT? Yay! This is our disaster response. So this is easy. This is the easy one to figure out if this is what you're doing. So Roger Sandberg is saying you should be able to pick which one of these 3 things you're doing. So relief is the right-away emergency response. Rehabilitation. This increases the capacity of a local community, enabling them to better respond to future crisis. Also seeks to promote projects and restore services or livelihoods to pre-existing or improved level. This is the long-term recovery. This is often where VIM falls into. This is a lot of construction. There has been a disaster, but you're still building the next year. You're still building 5 years down the road. This is often the rehabilitation. You're trying to get it back to where it was before the disaster happened. Development is the third on the continuum. This seeks to improve the standard of living over many years or decades. In best case scenario, relief and rehabilitation interventions are done with long-term development in mind. And so this is long-term commitment. This is your community development stage. There's also an oath for compassionate service, which I found really amazing, like an oath that doctors would take. And this is a lot of what we were talking about, like the things that we've done wrong as missionaries. These are the things that we're going to promise to not do. Never do for the poor what they have or could have the capacity to do for themselves. Paternalism. Limit one-way giving to emergency situations. We didn't talk much about that, but that's in the relief. That's keeping relief in relief. That's creating dependency. We don't want to do that. Strive to empower the poor through employment, lending, and investing, using grants sparingly to reinforce achievements. We'll talk in a minute about microlending. Subordinate self-interest to the needs of those being served. Don't go in telling somebody what's the best for them. They're the ones living in that situation. We're there to work with them, not for them, do things for them. Listen closely to those you seek to help, especially to what is not being said. Unspoken feelings may contain essential clues to effective service. One of the things that I've learned about colonial missions is the condition of this unequal power and how missionaries have been conditioned, and also the receiving end of the sites have also been conditioned. So it's really about listening and listening and listening, because it's building that healthy relationship kind of from the ground, like going backwards, and really just, I can't stress enough, just I'm here to do this with you and to respect the ministry that you're doing. This is not about me. Sorry. Above all, do no harm. I was going to have us make a list, but in the essence of time, that's something that we can, maybe we'll just do real quick. Does anybody have anything else that kind of pops up in your mind that you would think to add to that?
My daughter just actually stopped working for the CDC in Bangladesh, and she'd been there for 3 years and did a lot with diarrheal diseases, and that's all waterborne. And many people wanted to put in these really expensive water systems and everything, and she said the easiest way to do it is to chlorinate it.
Instead of, here's a machine.
Yes.
Gotcha. It's more about simple.
Yeah.
And then, they talk about that, and I can't remember which book, because I kind of read them back to back. A lot of times, the U.S. will come in and bring all this machinery and build these complicated systems, and they work for a while, but then when they break, and then we go home, and then you come back and there they are, like rusting away in the field. And it's more about what can we build that is, yeah, like that is
Sustain yourself.
right. Right, yeah, great. One of the things that we can talk about, I have a lot of resources at the end about the white savior complex, and that is a lot about white privilege. That's putting yourself at the center, putting yourself as the hero. I would definitely add that in as missionaries going into a different country, depending on where you're going. Just being very careful. There's a lot of really good resources on that to check out later. Relationship building is the number one of all of these. And I think that is countercultural for us as Americans, is that task-oriented. What are we going to do? What is our task? But really building relationships. One of the, and I'll get to that especially here, is building on the relationships of the places that we're serving, whether they're disaster relief, no matter where we are. I think it's the relationships that you're building that has to be first. So the main things that were pointed out were, of course, the relief and rehabilitation section, which would be the ERT, disaster relief, volunteers and mission, which would be long-term rehabilitation, those short-term type of mission trips that we're familiar with, something that you might not be as familiar with. Let's see. Is Dr. Muhammad Yunus, I'll read you a little excerpt from this, is he's the founder of microfinance. Is anybody familiar with microfinance? Anybody do that in their church? Hear about that? It's really exciting. So I'll read you this, and then I'll talk about Carlisle. In 1976, a virtually unknown economics professor was visiting a village in rural Bangladesh during a devastating famine. There he encountered Sufia, a very poor woman who was struggling to support her family by weaving bamboo stools. Sufia was trapped. She needed to borrow 22 cents per day to buy materials, but banks would not lend to her because she didn't have an acceptable collateral, and her desired loan size was too small. As a result, Sufia was forced to borrow from loan sharks whose exorbitant rates of interest left her with only 2 cents of profit at the end of a 12-hour workday. Sufia's neighbors expressed similar frustration, facing interest rates ranging from 10% per week, 520% per year, to 10% per day, 3,650% per year. The professor reached into his pocket and lent Sufia and 41 of her neighbors a total of $27. To the amazement of observers, the loans were fully repaid on time. Contrary to the received wisdom, it was possible to lend money to the very poor people and get it paid back. 35 years later, that economics professor, Dr. Muhammad Yunus, is a Nobel laureate, and the Grameen Bank, which he established to provide credit to the poorest people of Bangladesh, has 7.58 million poor borrowers and has lent $7.4 billion since its inception in 1976. More than 98% of Grameen's loans have been repaid, meaning that Grameen's money can be lent and relent to poor people over and over again. Moreover, Dr. Yunus's work has spawned the global microfinance movement, which aims to reach 175 million of the world's poorest families with loans and other financial services by the end of 2015. Indeed, microfinance, which is sometimes also referred to as microenterprise development, has become one of the premier strategies for bringing economic empowerment to poor people of the majority world. And then it talks about like when it doesn't work, when it does work, those sorts of things. I learned this year since I started just back in January, that Carlisle United Methodist Church has partnership in Melier, Haiti, and they have, I think, 20 or 25 people that they have started doing these microfinance loans. So if you go on their website, there's like a drop-down schedule or drop-down bar that you can look, and they have a really cool video. Like if you go down, they have like a whole bunch of sections, but there is a drop-down video that you can meet all of the people. It's really amazing, and I talked to the one man that kind of runs that. So I just wanted to mention that it is happening, and there are more mentions of it in the book, that it's definitely something that is viable of partnerships in international relationships. It talks about in the book why it doesn't work in the U.S. and different reasons like that. Community development. You may have heard of The Simple Way. Shane Claiborne. I didn't look up the years, but he's been around for years. I moved into communities and just going in from the ground up and really being a part of a community, just as Lupton from Toxic Charity. One of the ways I was thinking about the relationship building and how community development, like the idea that they were talking about in these books, how that can be conveyed in our short-term missions, because not everybody can just move into a poor neighborhood. I understand that that's not everybody's calling, not everybody's going to be able to do that, but there are more and more people that are able to do that. More and more churches are able to see that vision. More and more churches are able to catch that vision even in their own communities. You might want to start talking about it. But one of the things that you can think about when you're talking about short-term missions in your church, I would ask that you think about not jumping from place to place and really building a relationship with where you go. Because if you decide, I'm going to go to Costa Rica this year, and you start that relationship, and that's going to be good. You're going to like that, and they're going to really like that. And then, you're going to go to Honduras this year, and then you're going to go to India. As you're thinking, well, the people in Costa Rica are going to email you and say, okay, well, when are you coming next year? Well, you've just kind of left them in the dust. The way that community building can be is to really set up that relationship. One of the things that I say is I started to go to India in 2008. It's really hard for me to go anywhere else because now I've started that relationship with the people that run the school there. So we've been going back. Now we only are able to go about every other year because it's expensive. And now our whole family of 4 go. So we go about every other year, but we've built that relationship, and now they're my family. And so the kids and everything change there, but that's what stays the same, and that's how you build the community and how you build the community with the ministry that's happening there. So I think that's a type of community development that you could do in your short-term missions when you're thinking, like, how do I do this in my church with the missions that I'm doing? Let's see, do we have time? We have 15 minutes. Okay, so we can move. I have this cool exercise. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. We don't have an even number. That's okay. So I need 10 people. So 3, 6. So we need 10 people. If we can make like an oval in this area back over here. So 3, 6, 9, and then one of you to make a circle. And what I'm gonna give you a heads up. So I don't like role-playing activities and on-the-spot activities. I freeze. But I will say that there's always something good that comes out of them. So that's why I'm making you do it, because I actually learned something from it. So if you create kind of like a circle, if you can spread out, stretch it down to the door so that you have some space in between you. I wasn't sure what this room was going to look like. Actually, Ryan, do you want to participate?
Oh, sure.
Yes, then we have an even amount. So I have 22, right? Okay, so then you can join the circle, right? So now we have 11?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, math. And so your heads up is, I want you to think about, there's someone in your community that your heart breaks for. So I want you to think about that group or that person. So now I want the rest of the people, this is really tight, sorry, to find a partner. So when you guys get up, you'll come into the inside of the circle and you'll stand facing someone. So once they come in, you back up as much as you can. And it doesn't really have to be a circle, so if you want to make like a blob, a blob, that's a technical term. Yeah. So you guys can come on up, and then you'll just face a person. And you're not going to stay with that person the whole time, so it doesn't matter. You don't have to be besties. This is going to be a fast-moving exercise. Sort of fast-moving. Once you find a person that you can, and if you want to come, actually if you want to come around, yeah, don't be blinded. Even if you want to stand, I don't know how we can, yeah, don't be blinded. So where does our circle? I just want you to be comfortable. Yeah. So, yeah, are you good? So we have like kind of a flow. So what you're going to end up doing is the people on the inside of the circle are going to move one to your right after each question. So that's why you kind of need to know where you're going. Yeah. So you'll figure it out. You're smart. Okay. So you're going to say your name, and then you'll answer the question. And then so you'll have 30 seconds, and then the other person will say your name, and you'll have 30 seconds to answer that question. After that 1 minute, then the people in the middle will move one person to your right. And then there'll be another question. And so it'll be 30 seconds and 30 seconds.
Does it matter whether it's inside or
No.
outside goes first?
No, it's whoever's least nervous. So, so here's the cool thing about this. You don't really have to be nervous because it's all made up. So, I'm not supposed to walk on that side. So just go with your instincts and, say what you're thinking, and I'm not going to quiz you, and it's not a big deal. So this is just kind of like a brainstorming activity, and it's super quick, so it's not like a huge deal. Like, that's what I said. I get nervous about stuff like that, but it's actually a very neat idea. So, okay, so your first question is, what idea has God given you, and who will it help? So this could be like a ministry idea or an organization idea, maybe centered around that group of people or that person that you thought of. All right, and I'll give you a couple extra seconds because I got to pull up my timer. Okay, now, ready? Here's your first 30 seconds. So say your name, and then what idea has God given you, and who will it help? Ready? Go. Time's up. Ah. All right, time's up. Go ahead and switch. now just the other person, the person you're facing goes. Okay, now just wait. Okay, time's up. Okay, now everybody in the center, take a step to your right. The inside person goes to your right. All right, from now on, you'll say your name and your idea plus your answer. So depending on how long your answer is, you might have to talk really fast. And then you'll have the 30 seconds for the inside person, and then 30 seconds for the outside person. So say your name, your idea, like your general idea, and then answer the question. Okay, the question is, why do you care about this idea so much? Ready? The first person goes. Okay, time's up. Next person. Ready? Next person. Okay, time's up. Everybody move one person over. All right, so say your name and your idea, and then the question is, why should the church do this and not just leave it to the general goodwill of the public? Ready, set, go. Time's up. Switch partners. Go ahead. All right, time's up. Switch partners. All right, your name and your idea, and is there a scripture that comes to your mind when you think about your idea? Ready? Go. time's up. Time to switch partner, or switch to the other person. All right, time's up. Move one person down. We have like 3 minutes left. All right. What do you need and what do you already have to get started? Are there already programs that you can piggyback on? Ready, go. All right, time's up. Other partner gets to answer. Go ahead. All right, time's up. Next person. All right, are you ready? It's 10 years down the road and your project has exceeded your wildest dreams. Describe what it looks like. Okay, next person. Okay, last question. Switch partners. Switch, yeah, one person to your right, it's the last one. All right, you're back. Next person. You're back to Wednesday, May 29th. What's your next step for your idea? Go ahead. I'm going to go over just like 2 minutes. Is that okay? All right, next person. Time's up. Okay, if you can take your seats. You guys did better at this than me. Come on down to your seats. They're going to kick us out. I know. I know. This is awesome. I need some ideas. I'm going to stay kind of true to our time because there is another class in here. Or else I'd let you talk. I was like, oh, we can go over. There's a half an hour in between classes. But there's another presenter that has to come in. So I don't want to be too crazy about our time. But you guys did way better than I did. I was like, when we sat down, I just did this at the Mission Academy. When we sat down, the presenter said, oh, and you, and he pointed at me and he goes, you were like a deer in the headlights when I announced it. I was like, yeah, I hate this kind of stuff. So then I emailed him and I said, oh, hey, I was the person that you pointed out. And he laughed. So I said, but it'll be much more fun for me because I didn't have to do it. Yeah, he did. So what did you discover about your idea? Anybody want to respond real quick, or about the process, or about yourself?
I discovered the hardest question was, what's the next step?
Yeah.
Ideas are real easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Implementation.
That story you read about the guy sitting there at Christmas and people bring, it's always been part of my mind that giving presents indiscriminately to children, the parents know what the children know more, and I've always felt parents should have a place to shop. Due to circumstances within my church, we may now have space to do a toy store. We already have a clothing center, so it would be a part for birthdays and for Christmas.
Oh, neat. I didn't think about the birthday part.
And
Nice.
then the parents have, because they may not want Barbies in, they may not,
Right.
It might not be a sports kid and you get a football.
Yeah. My kid always got the Barbies, and we were like, we don't want these. Yeah.
This is.
Cool.
This is my idea. It's really neat because this opportunity is just now opening up for us to start seeing a new vision. This might be a place for us to do that.
Cool. That's really neat to hear. We're almost done. I know we went over. He's like, no, don't look. Awesome. Anybody else want to share anything?
Well, that was nice because the partner said things that helped my ideas. I said things that helped their ideas.
Yeah.
And maybe years down the road in another place or time, we can steal the other person.
Yeah. Share, not steal. Yeah. Yeah. And I liked it when I did it because I had to let that guard again. I had to just say stuff really fast. And so it just made me do it. And then I was like, oh, I'm just saying stuff now. So that helped me. Yeah, I was just like, oh, I didn't even know I had this idea. So now it's just in there. And now I'm like, ooh, maybe I'll have to act on this. Yeah, ooh. You know how those end up. So I do have some really cool YouTube and some articles for you to check out, and just Google stuff. There were Reverend Taylor Walters Denyer was the missiologist that was at the Mission Academy. She was great. The Last Missionary was the book that her father wrote. So she talked about that a lot. A lot of the information about colonial missionaries came from her, from the Mission Academy that I went to. And she quoted Consuming Mission, very much. When I went to the Mission Academy, I don't remember her talking about this book, but when I went through my materials, I found this listed. So I went back and last night I was looking, and I really got sucked into this book on Amazon. I'm buying this book because just the snippets, you know how you can look at parts of the book? I want to read this book. Like I said, we moved, my husband and I and our 7-year-old at the time, to India, and it was really cool how she was very blunt about her time in Costa Rica, and I liked how she wrote, so that was really interesting. This Dead Aid was what I quoted from the one book. So all the best to you, and thank you very much. Thanks.